Now we're giving even our kids cell phones, little, I don't know, maybe even 2 years old, sitting with an iPhone and a big old juice. It's just like a little mobile crack house, their stroller. It's like a little, you know what I mean? And the parents don't know, they're on their phone. They just want to pacify the child because maybe the child doesn't want to sit in the seat. And so what we do is we give them drugs. I know it sounds extreme, but it is what it is. We give them the phone. These are all distractions from their situation. The kid doesn't want to sit still because the kid's used to eating sugar. The kid gets restless, goes through withdrawals, becomes irritable, whiny. We then attribute it to their personality or their behavior. We scold them, or we give them more drugs to quiet them down. All right, today we're going to be talking about what causes food cravings. We're going to look at the addiction cycle. We're going to see what happens. How do we get to that point to where we're craving and we find ourselves relapsing? If we're trying to be on a diet, trying to eat properly, what is it that gets us to go back and do the thing that we don't want to do? So let's get into it. What causes food cravings? A food craving is an intense desire for a specific food. This desire can seem uncontrollable and may cause a person to crave typically unhealthy foods. Yeah, so when we say food addiction, we're not talking about any food. We're not talking about being addicted to fruit and vegetables. We're talking about being addicted to processed foods. Even someone like myself who's doing carnivore at the moment, I'm not addicted to steak. I'm not addicted to ground beef. I still have an addiction to carbohydrates, and those carbohydrates are processed foods. These foods are made to be addictive, but there's a catch. An addiction can only become an addiction when there's something that we're trying to distract ourselves away from, usually trauma, or it could just be stress from the day. It could be exhaustion. We could be tired. So why is it that we turn to these certain foods to make us feel better? In some cases, food cravings may lead a person to desire junk foods. In most cases, I would say almost all cases, at least for myself, I don't see myself addicted to anything else. Like I said, I'm not addicted to anything other than processed food, and all processed food is junk. Food cravings are extremely common, with more than 90% of people experiencing them. That's a lot of people. I mean, if you're watching this video, chances are you have a food addiction. There's some type of food that you just cannot resist. And it may depend on the day, it may depend on what kind of day you're having, but at its core, especially for us Muslims, because we don't have experience, at least most of us don't have any experience with addiction. We think that's for non-Muslims. We think that's only for illicit drugs, for gambling, things like that. So, I mean, we're aware of an addiction to caffeine. I know a lot of us drink caffeine, have a hard time quitting. But I think food addiction is our biggest addiction and our biggest problem. We're climbing the charts of bad health, especially in type 2 diabetes. So every person experiences cravings differently, but they're typically transient and often for processed foods that are high in sugar, salt, and unhealthful fats. So this is the key to part of what makes processed food so highly palatable. It's the combination of fat and sugar. Fat and sugar each have their own pleasure centers or pleasure pathways in our brains. So when we eat something that has both fat and sugar, it's a double-barreled shotgun. The combination of the two is so intense that it puts it above and beyond normal food or real food. And so when we eat something sweet, or if we eat any kind of processed food that has this combination of fat and sugar, it's not just the taste buds that are going crazy. It's also our brain. In fact, if you were to cut out sugar for 3 months, like no sugar at all, no carbs, and then you were to have some type of junk food, some type of sweet or dessert, you'll feel a high. It's just that because we've been eating sugar our entire lives, we've built such a tolerance that we don't really feel the high anymore, but it's there. Research suggests that males are more likely to crave savory foods, whereas females are more likely to crave high-fat, sweet foods. Well, I don't know about that because every brother I know likes high-fat sweet foods. So I don't know if this applies to Muslims or not, but brothers like that high fat sweet food as well. Food cravings can lead a person to eat foods that have adverse health effects, and they can disrupt efforts to follow a healthful diet. This article looks at the causes of food cravings and explains what simple steps people can take to handle them. So that's good. We'll see what they have to say, what kind of steps we can take. I have my own strategy. I may sprinkle in what I do as well. We'll see what they say. And the reason the food craving can lead a person to adverse health effects is because of the constant eating. Because food addiction doesn't mean you just have, some processed food or some highly palatable food once a week. You're eating it every day, or at least every other day, or you're trying to not eat it and you just find that you just can't stop, even if it's harming you, even if it's negatively affecting your health. So now I don't know if this is a fat dude or a pregnant woman. I'm gonna guess a fat dude because there's pancakes and I think they want to, show that this isn't good for you. I don't know what this is, but yeah, they don't know. They don't even have no syrup on these pancakes. So that's not very tempting. People might experience food cravings seemingly out of nowhere, or may be related to seeing, smelling, or hearing about a specific food. For instance, seeing an advertisement for chocolate might trigger a craving for it. And these are what are called cues and triggers. Seeing, smelling, hearing, or even thinking. If we're stressed, if we're tired, or we have some underlying dormant trauma from our childhood or, even recently in our lives, which comes in the form of feeling bored or just feeling incomplete. It could drive us to eating these types of foods because that's what addiction is. It's a substance or behavior that we're compelled to engage with, even though we know it's harmful. We just can't stop. So yeah, the trigger is the first part of the addiction cycle, or the cue. The brain regions responsible for memory, pleasure, and reward play a role in food cravings. An imbalance of hormones such as leptin and serotonin could also lead to food cravings. Yeah, these regions responsible for memory, pleasure, and reward, it's the limbic system. This works in tandem with the prefrontal cortex. So you have the dopamine that triggers us to anticipate a reward, a meaningful reward, and then the limbic system kicks in that gives us the drive to achieve that goal, whatever it may be. And if it's something bad, our prefrontal cortex is supposed to step in and stop it. It's impulse control. So prefrontal cortex is very important. Cravings also involve the appetite centers of the brain, even though they tend to be separate from hunger. Various factors can affect a person's food cravings. In people who menstruate, hormonal fluctuations across the menstrual cycle can create food cravings. So there have been studies that show that during the menstrual cycle, this is subhanAllah, this is such a mercy from Allah. During the menstrual cycle, the prefrontal cortex is weak. There's a lack of self-restraint, a lack of self-control. There's a lot of hormonal things, as it mentions here, a lot of hormonal fluctuations going on to where the woman has less self-restraint. Alhamdulillah, in Islam, during that time, women don't have to pray, they don't have to fast. Allah has given them what my family calls, when they're on vacation, Allah gives them that freedom to not have to rely on willpower because their prefrontal cortex is just not as strong because of the hormones. So alhamdulillah, Allah is merciful. Islam is practical in that when women are menstruating, they're cut some slack. They don't have to pray, fast, and do other things. People can experience especially strong cravings during pregnancy due to hormonal changes. A person may also experience pica, which is a craving for non-food items such as chalk, dirt, coins, or ice chips. Emotions can also contribute to food cravings, such as in cases of comfort eating. It is also possible that some food cravings may be related to specific foods because the body needs particular nutrients. When your body needs something, it has you crave it. So if you crave fat, that means you need fat. You crave salt, you need salt, etc. And also your taste buds will tell you if you're having too much. If you're having too much salt, you'll know. It won't taste so good. There are two types of food cravings, selective and non-selective. Selective cravings are cravings for specific foods such as a person's favorite chocolate bar, a particular burger from their favorite restaurant, or a bag of potato chips of a certain flavor. So a lot of people just need salt. That's why they crave potato chips or French fries or pizza. These things are all high in sodium. And a burger is a combination of the burger itself. The patty is good for you, but when you mix it with the bun, the ketchup, the fries, you're now mixing it with sugar, which kicks in the Randall cycle, which is not good. And why you should not eat a balanced diet, because that balanced diet is usually fat and sugar mixed together. Non-selective hunger is the desire to eat anything. It may be the result of real hunger and hunger pangs, but it can also be a sign of thirst. Drinking water may help with intense non-selective cravings. When I was growing up, a lot of times my dad or my mom would tell me when I was little, I'd say, "Oh, I'm hungry." He'd say, "No, you're just thirsty." I don't know if that was a way of saying, we don't have really much food to eat right now, so just drink some water. I'm not quite sure, but I thought I was hungry. It may be the result of real hunger pangs. A lot of this also is if you eat a lot of carbs, you get an insulin spike. The insulin drops, you go into a hypoglycemic state, low blood sugar, and then you're hungry again. This is the cycle of a balanced diet, which you don't want. Skip the ad. There are a variety of ways to reduce unwanted food cravings. People can try the following techniques. All right, let's see what they have to say. Reduce stress levels. Stress and emotional eating can influence a variety of health issues. Feeling stress may promote emotional eating and cravings for comfort foods. For example, a 2015 study found that chronic stress was related to more food cravings and that this led to a higher body mass index in participants. Stress may also cause weight gain even without food cravings. Stress results in higher levels of cortisol, a stress hormone. It's not really a stress hormone. It's much more complex than that, which may promote abdominal fat. Yeah, this is insulin resistance. When you start to get primarily abdominal fat, that's insulin resistance. That's too much sugar. And let's see, drink plenty of water. This helps you dodge whether or not you're actually hungry. A lot of times you are thirsty. It's just the signal is mixed, especially if, like I said, you're eating a high carb diet. You're going to be hungry. Hunger and thirst can produce very similar sensations, potentially leading people to confuse the feeling of thirst for hunger. By the way, we're in winter right now, so it's shown that in the cold time of the year, anytime it's cold, our thirst signals can drop as much as 70%. So we're not going to really feel thirsty. And then we become dehydrated. Then our nasal passages, our lungs, things start to dry out, get dehydrated, which can cause little micro lesions or little micro, dry cuts per se in our nose and in our sinus, which then gives rise to the toxins that are in our blood, which then causes, because we're dry and not drinking enough water, then our body creates mucus to try to contain those toxins that are coming out of our blood. This is how you can get a head cold. This is how you can get a sore throat, or even some type of respiratory illness. So be sure to drink a lot of water in the winter, even if you're not thirsty. Make sure you stay hydrated. There's no flu in this season. There's just toxins in your body. This is why most carnivores never really get sick. It's because when you've minimized the amount of toxins in your body, if you don't drink enough water and you get those little micro lesions or those little cuts, when something's really dry, there's not going to really be much toxins or anything that's going to come out of there. So your body doesn't need to create a bunch of mucus to try to contain it. Some people may find their food cravings reduce when they stay hydrated throughout the day. Drinking plenty of water offers many health benefits. Water is essential to life, so it's more than just health benefits. You have to drink water. Get enough sleep. 2013 study found that not getting enough sleep could alter the body's hormonal balance. This imbalance may contribute to overeating and weight gain. Researchers noted that switching from controlled sleep deprivation to an adequate sleep schedule caused the participants to lose weight, indicating that the increase in sleep quantity brought their hormones back into balance. I would say it's more of sleep quality, because you can get 10 hours of sleep and still be tired when you wake up. It's the quality of the sleep that's important. And I recommend not eating within 4 hours of going to sleep. That way your body can rest and repair properly. It's not digesting food all night. You're not spiking insulin, which then can kick off cortisol, which then kicks off the wake cycle. So you'll toss and turn if you eat carbs. You may go to sleep fast, but you're probably not going to get a good quality sleep if you're eating the wrong food. I recommend going to bed. Like, I'm on the West Coast in the US. I go to bed between 10:30. I try not to go to bed any later than 10:30. Because if I stay up later, the later you stay up, you will start to get that midnight snack craving. I did a video some time ago talking about how not getting enough sleep can lead to type 2 diabetes. This is what this is sort of indicating here. Eat enough protein. Very good advice. Healthful diet should contain plenty of lean sources of protein, as they may help reduce cravings. So now they've thrown in lean. This article is kind of indirectly supporting the typical balanced diet belief. As if you're on carnivore, you do not want lean sources, you want fatty sources of protein. Protein is absorbed best when it's paired with fat. So don't trim the fat when you get your beef. For example, the results of a 2020 review of animal studies suggest that eating protein can suppress appetite and reduce ghrelin, a hormone related to appetite. Protein is very satiating, and it's extremely important for the build and repair of muscle and other aspects of the body. I mean, the body needs protein to make things. Chew gum. Chewing gum keeps the mouth busy and may help reduce both sweet and salty cravings. A 2011 study found a small but significant difference in sweet and salty snack consumption between people who chewed gum and those who did not. Those who chewed gum rated themselves less hungry, had fewer cravings for snacks, and felt fuller than those who did not chew gum. I talked about this in another video. These studies aren't really studies, they're surveys, but they can push us in a direction to try something for ourselves. Because in the end, that's what a study is. It's something that's doing surveys, taking anecdotal evidence, and trying to persuade us to either follow a certain diet or to avoid another diet. That's really all these studies are. It's just a sales pitch. Change the scenery. Good advice. Some food cravings may be due to long-term habits, which can be difficult to replace. For instance, if someone gets fast food on their way home from work every day, this journey may cause cravings. Yes, that fast food place is associated with the reward. Once you've eaten the food, you get that celebration in the brain and the taste buds, and it gets associated with that fast food restaurant. So let's say you're coming home and you had a stressful day at work. What's going to relieve that stress? Well, the brain remembers, the brain knows that fast food place makes us feel good. So you're going to get cravings. So the trigger is the fast food restaurant, in this case, the cue. Situations such as these, people can try to form new habits. Forming new habits does indeed help to control an old bad habit, an addiction. Rather than just trying to resist the addiction and just sitting there, it's good to then try to focus on a new habit. Our brains love habits, but we have to try to control the brain to have more good habits than bad habits. Doing this might be as straightforward as trying a new route home from work or stopping at the park for a quick walk instead of stopping to pick up fast food. This is also good advice. Physical activity has been shown in a lot of people to help when they're in a dopamine deficit state, when they're going through withdrawals. So change the scenery. Great advice. For example, here at my desk, I work here during the day at my day job, but I also try to use this desk to improve my skills for my day job, whether it's studying for a certification or what have you. But I also read. I also do research for, for my YouTube channel, for the website. But it's very difficult to do all of those things in this one place, because I also look at YouTube on here when I'm doing research or just scrolling on YouTube. So what I do now is, if I'm reading, I go to a different location. A lot of times when I'm doing research for my YouTube channel, I go to the living room. Try to split things up, because if I just sit here, I'm more likely to go on YouTube and slack off. Because if I get in on YouTube binge, then everything else suffers. So it's good to change the scenery. Like I said here, take a different route home. If you have a really strong food addiction and you find you can't say no at get-togethers, you may have to put off get-togethers for a while until you get the addiction under control. Usually takes about a month for the brain to rebalance itself, to create dopamine naturally again, because you're going to be in a deficit because of the food addiction or other addictions. If you're addicted to haram websites, if you're addicted to shopping, whatever, spending money, all kinds of other things that we can be addicted to. When we're not doing that thing, the brain is saying, where is it? What's going on? This is going to make us feel good. And if you've been doing it a long time, for many years, you're going to be beyond doing it to feel good. You're going to be doing it to not feel bad. That's one of the big harms of an addiction. Food cravings at home may help to walk around the block, take a shower, or even call a friend. I recommend a cold shower. I know you may have heard this. If you're feeling a certain way, say, go take a cold shower. That cold is like a hormetic stress. And by doing a hormetic stress, it's kind of like a beneficial stress. So when you take that cold shower, you get that shock that puts us in a state of pain, not intense pain, but a state of discomfort. So what the brain tries to do is it tries to counter by creating pleasure, by spiking dopamine. It's always trying to keep that pain and pleasure balance. So taking a cold shower, if we're in a deficit of pain, we're going through withdrawals, when we have the craving, let's go to the iPad. Let me explain this a little bit. Let's go to the handy dandy iPad. So the addiction cycle goes like this. You have a cue. In this case, it would be coming home from work. You're driving past the fast food restaurant. This is the cue. I would put an M or something, but I don't want to call any certain fast food restaurant out. So you have a cue. And then what that does, because it's associated with pleasure, it creates the craving. Now, one thing that's happening when you have the craving is the dopamine already starts to elevate in anticipation of getting the reward, which would be the fast food, say burger and fries. The longer you go not giving in, the more and more this dopamine increases, and then it crashes. And when it crashes, that's when you start to feel like almost a physical need for that food, for those burgers and fries. It's usually that breaking point where we go, let's say we're on a diet, we don't want to eat burgers and fries. That's usually when we relapse. It's when we have that huge craving and then crash, and we go below baseline of that balance of pain and pleasure. That's the craving. Craving is actually pain. So if we give in, it then goes to can't draw a burger. Burger and fries. I don't know what that is. Looks like the burger's shooting laser beams or something. But you give in and you relapse. And then the cycle starts all over again. And each time you go through that cycle, you're strengthening the relationship, that Pavlovian relationship between the restaurant and pleasure. This is the cycle of addiction in a nutshell. This is basically it. So you can replace this cue with whatever. Going to a friend's house, craving dessert, eat the dessert, feel pleasure, get a high. Cycle gets strengthened. All right, let's go back to the article. Okay, avoid hunger. Strong feelings of hunger may lead a person to crave more calorie-dense foods such as processed or fried foods. eating when hunger begins can help curb these cravings. And this is because the hungrier you get, and because your body is conditioned to use glucose as its primary fuel source, these types of food are quickly metabolized and provide energy. So the body's saying, I'm really hungry, you need food. And so eat these processed foods because it's going to give us energy very quickly. It's going to instantly. In fact, certain sweets metabolize instantly on your tongue. It's instantly absorbed into the body because those little, those little saliva ducts under your tongue as a direct, that little area there has very thin capillaries that instantly go into the bloodstream. So it's kind of wild when you think about it. I mean, I call processed sugar a drug. Many people in the world do. A lot of scientists would agree, but we'll save that for another video. This reminds me of some of these little pills, these little dissolvable pills that they have from Europe for head colds and things. A lot of times you put them under your tongue. That's why you put it under your tongue, because there's those little capillaries that instantly absorb the medicinal properties in those pills. It goes straight into the bloodstream, and as well as the gums. You ever seen a movie, somebody rubs cocaine on their teeth? It's to get it into the gums. Gives it a direct bloodline. When craving for an unhealthful food arises, it may help to eat a more healthful alternative instead. Below are some of the most common snacks that people crave and suggestions of alternatives. Let's see what they have to say here. Potato chips. Try replacing chips with a salty snack that is higher in healthful fats and protein, such as salted cashews or peanuts. I don't recommend that. These things are loaded with oxalates. They usually don't agree with people. I know they don't agree with me. I get bloated anytime I eat any type of cashews or peanuts. However, bear in mind that nuts without salt are a more healthful option, as too much salt can be harmful. That's not true at all for people who are not already sick. And this article isn't saying, it's focusing more on a food addiction, not type 2 diabetes or anything. So this is only applicable if you have high blood pressure, in which case you want to address the high blood pressure. And if you want to lower your high blood pressure, you do a carnivore diet. As counterproductive as that sounds, because we've been brainwashed to think that saturated fat clogs up in your blood or causes plaque, we don't need it. But it is the best way to lower your blood pressure. Air-popped popcorn is another healthful replacement for potato chips. Eat some beef bacon. If you can get some halal beef jerky, even some bone broth, these things are high in salt. One thing that I would do is, even though it's not carnivore, I'll drink a little bit of pickle juice. This has been a great way to also curb any sugar cravings. In the beginning, when you first start the carnivore diet, you're going to go through sugar withdrawals. A lot of people call it a keto flu. They usually say it's due to an electrolyte imbalance when you get that flu feeling, but it's really, if you do a drastic change to a new diet, your body can kind of go into shock a little bit, so to say, and may not feel well. And those toxins are your body's detoxing. So you're no longer eating those toxins. They're trying to come out of your body. Your body can finally get rid of them. And so you may get what they call a keto flu. But a lot of times it's just the withdrawal from sugar, especially if you're someone who drinks soda, just like freebasing with sugar. If you drink soda and you're just always eating sweets, you could have some pretty harsh withdrawal symptoms. Chocolate. Opt for chocolate that contains at least 70% cocoa so that it is rich in antioxidants. As dark chocolate has more intense flavor than milk chocolate, people may feel satisfied with a smaller portion. Just avoid chocolate. It also has a lot of oxalates, and it has caffeine. So try the pickle juice. If you're someone who craves chocolate, drink some pickle juice. I want to cover later in this. I hope I don't forget. Let me make a little note here on learning and notating our cues. This is very important because you want to avoid those cues in the beginning when you're going through withdrawal. This is when we are the most susceptible to cravings. And when we're craving, because it's activating the limbic system, that emotional part of the brain that gives us the drive and the motivation to reach our goal, to get the prize, to get the reward. Consequently, Our prefrontal cortex, which I was explaining is our executive brain that gives us self-restraint, it's turned off. This is one of the ways in which addiction hijacks our brain. So imagine you get a cue, you get a craving, your brain is saying, let's go get it. And the part of your brain that would normally stop you is turned off. So there's a physical restraint in our brain from our frontal lobe. And then we relapse, we give in. I think it's even in the Quran about seizing our frontal lobe and how we then engage in sin. SubhanAllah, it's exactly what happens, especially with addiction. All right, so don't eat chocolate, candy, or pastries. When craving sugary foods, try replacing them with sweet fruit, such as peaches, cherries, or melon. Keep dried fruits, I don't recommend that, it's pretty much candy, such as prunes or raisins, on hand, may also be helpful for cravings on the go. Depending on the strength of your addiction, it's usually recommended to practice abstinence. Because imagine someone who is an alcoholic who's trying to go sober. How successful do you think they would be if they then tried to wean off of alcohol, or just drink in moderation, or even drink non-alcoholic beer? It's not going to work. It's a very slippery slope. It's just a matter of time before you slip into eating, in this case, pastries and candy. If you're eating fruit, especially peaches and melon, it doesn't matter that it's coming from fruit or if it's coming from a pastry. You can try to wean off sugar by switching to fruit, but if you find yourself relapsing and eating pastries or sugar or things you don't want to eat when you're eating fruit, try abstinence. What I do with food, because this is, after being Muslim now, this is one of my remaining addictions from my jahiliyyah, but other addictions that I've had, a couple of substance ones, I quit cold turkey. Not hardcore, I didn't do any hardcore illicit drugs. I don't want you to start thinking like, oh man, it was a mess. It wasn't like that, but it was things that wasn't good for me. And abstinence was the only way that I could quit, going cold turkey, as they say. So with carnivore, you can wean on. I recommend it. A lot of people have some stomach issues. If they do it overnight, just go from high carbs to carnivore. You can wean off, but try your best to make abstinence your goal. Soda. Sparkling water with a squeeze of fruit juice or a slice of orange can replace a craving for soda. It provides a similar feeling to soda, but has fewer calories and less sugar. Let me speak a second about soda. Soda metabolizes exactly like beer, and it has the exact effect on your liver as beer. So as Muslims, we don't drink beer, but we replace it with soda. And because it's so high in sugar, we also get a high. This is why you want it. Highly palatable, the tongue, 4th of July on the tongue, because of the mixture of the sugar and the salt and the chemicals they put in there. They pay scientists millions of dollars to find that threshold of flavor on the taste bud to make it just irresistible. A lot of people just can't say no to soda. That should be a big red flag. Like, hey, something's not right here. I don't have a craving for anything else. I don't crave water in this way. I don't crave milk in this way, or any other type of drink that doesn't have sugar. And so when we're giving our kids soda, you're giving them a beer. And this is why so many people now are getting non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's because soda has the exact same effect on the liver as beer. A can of soda, as far as your liver is concerned, exact same as a beer. The only difference between a soda and a beer is that a beer gets you higher than a soda. And I know it may rub you the wrong way. I know it may not be nice to hear, but you do get high when you drink soda. It's just that you've been consuming sugar for so long, we built a tolerance to it. But you do get high, that's why you drink it. Cheese. Try replacing full-fat cheese with low-fat. Not a good idea, because anytime they take the fat out of a food, they replace it with sugar, because the two energy sources in our body is either sugar or fat. And if you're eating both together, which is bad, it's like a sliding scale. The cells will use fat, it'll use sugar. It's not an on or off thing. It's a gradient. But full fat is more satiating because it's full of fat. So your body's going to use the fat. But if you primarily are eating a carbohydrate diet, which this is implying, this is implying and assuming that you're on a SAD diet, standard American diet. And so it's saying to eat low fat, but that's not a good idea if you have a sugar craving. Low sodium versions for a more healthful option. And we know that's not true if you're healthy. Nutritional yeast, a nutty, savory food, can lend a cheesy flavor to foods. Nutritional yeast is usually, here it says it right here. Nutritional yeast is rich in B complex vitamins and folic acid and often contains vitamin B12. I recommend you get all your B vitamins from beef. That's the best source. Nature's way is the best, the way Allah made it. So is this it? What is that? No, it's PlayStation. So here it has a link to its science-backed nutrition. This is not true. None of it is science. It's epidemiology. But again, that they use that that's their sales pitch. That's the way to make their living. And so anyway, this is the addiction cycle. This is how we have these food cravings. And the longer we have it, and for most of us, it started when we were little kids. We get soda or we get a lot of candy. And we think that this is okay. We think, oh, they're young, let them have all this junk food. But what you're actually doing is building a weak foundation. You're building a body that is going to be prone to being sick more often, have more cravings, mood swings. A lot of children have a hard time sitting still, paying attention. It's getting misdiagnosed as ADHD when it's really just sugar-induced attention deficit. Now we're giving even our kids cell phones, little, I don't know, maybe even 2 years old, sitting with an iPhone and a big old juice. It's just like a little mobile crack house, their stroller. It's like a little, you know what I mean? And the parents don't know. They're on their phone. They just want to pacify the child because maybe the child doesn't want to sit in the seat. And so what we do is we give them drugs. I know it sounds extreme, but it is what it is. We give them the phone. These are all distractions from their situation. The kid doesn't want to sit still because the kid's used to eating sugar. The kid gets restless, goes through withdrawals, becomes irritable, whiny. We then attribute it to their personality or their behavior. We scold them, or we give them more drugs to quiet them down. We give them a little phone, which is not how a small child should be learning their way in the world, by looking at a screen. They should be looking around. They should be looking at you, hearing your voice, not the voice on a screen. And when you give them juice, the juice is like a soda. It's just pure sugar. Doesn't matter if it's organic. It doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's sugar. Especially a lot of these juices have high fructose corn syrup. All of this stuff goes straight to their liver. So you're just hammering their liver. And of course, the brain, their brain is highly developing. So we've been doing this a long time. So it's not going to be easy. And the thing we want to do is, the more we understand how addiction works, the more of a chance we have of controlling it. Because otherwise we just take it personal. We think like, oh, I'm weak. What's wrong with me? Or this is impossible. This is what happens when we don't have the knowledge. Same in the deen. If we lack knowledge in the deen, then we don't understand certain things. We don't understand, why do I do this? Why can't I do that? It's just a matter of knowledge. But to understand something, you have to do it. It's a big difference between having knowledge and having understanding. Knowledge is something you learn. It's in your head. But to understand it, you have to experience it. Anytime you get a craving, try to think of the moment just before you got the craving. This will indicate your cue. And you want to write these down. You may even know it without writing down. You may know, like, if I go to my friend's house, if I'm talking on the phone, if I'm watching TV, what else? If I'm at work, usually if you have a day job, they probably have a lot of stuff sitting out there, a lot of chips and candies and things. Figure out your cues and then avoid them for the first 2-3 weeks until those physical sensations or those cravings of sugar go away. And if you think you're not addicted to carbs, just try carnivore. I think you'd be very surprised to find out just how addicted to carbs you are. Because a lot of people go into carnivore or keto and they go, I can do that. If I set my mind to something, I'm getting it done. And then they try carnivore or keto. And after a couple of weeks, sometimes it doesn't even last more than 4 days. They're like, I just can't do that right now. I'm busy and blah, blah, boom. You start coming up with all these excuses to justify relapsing. And then also, we don't want to forget the shaitan factor. So all the while we're going through these cravings because shaitan is flowing through our blood. And when shaitan knows our inclinations, shaitan is like a cheerleader, just cheering on the cravings. Yeah, let's go, let's go. And so the nafs, it's almost like as if dopamine and these chemicals in our brains that drive us towards things, it's kind of like our nafs. It can drive us towards good, could drive us towards bad. Of course, shaitan whispers to us to do the bad. So highly recommend you learn as much as possible. Try to see and be honest with yourself whether you have a food addiction. You do if you have bad health and you're still unable to stop eating the junk food. And I know a lot of Muslim countries, soda and all these things are celebrated, but it's killing you, slowly killing you. It's poison. And so we should not destroy ourselves with our own hands. This is what we're doing when we eat processed food and drinks. So hopefully this has been beneficial, inshallah. If it has, please share. I'm trying to keep up with the algorithm. I'm trying to learn how YouTube works, how to get these videos seen. I know I have to jump through a lot of hoops to try to get thumbnails and titles and all these things to be appealing, to get people to click on them. But if you did find it beneficial, please share. Please have people like and do all these things to try to help push this forward so that other Muslims can benefit, inshallah. So till next time, may Allah reward you for being curious and keep tying your camel. Assalamu alaikum.